gavel here. It's your meeting, and what I will do is point around to people in the room that want to speak or ask a question.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, and it is my pleasure to call to order the meeting of the Direct Support Organization Committee, and ask that if Ms. Wiggins, if you will do our roll call.
Trustee Thomas Dorch.
Here.
Trustee Justin Bruno. Trustee Betty Grable.
Here.
Trustee Dave Lawrence.
Here.
Trustee Kelvin Lawson.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Oh, good. I apologize for not being able to be there physically. I'm in Louisiana today, but I am there in spirit. What I'd like to ask, if you will look at your minute book and ask for a motion to approve the minutes of our March 15, 2017 DSO committee meeting.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any unreadiness? Hearing none, all in favor, let it be known by aye.
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 Opposed is nay. Motion carries. Members, also, if you remember, all of our committees have been moving appropriately to ensure that we had our vice chairs for our committee so that we can at least ensure we are functional, and for any reason the chair is out, and the DSO committee is no different today. So the floor is open for recommendations of a trustee who will accept the role as vice chair of the DSO committee.
This is Trustee Grable. I nominate Dave Lawrence.
Okay.
But I'm here and therefore would not be eligible.
Don't be like that. It doesn't work that way. Even though it did work.
I'd be pleased to serve with you. Okay.
And Trustee Lawrence, would you accept that role?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Then let me just formally do it. All those, are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor of the one nominee, Trustee Dave Lawrence, all in favor by aye, the sign of aye.
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 Opposed is nay. Motion carries. And now we've got our vice chair of the DSO, and so welcome aboard, even though you've been aboard all this time. So thank you again for accepting that responsibility. The next part of our agenda is to move to our informational items for the DSO committee. I'm going to ask at this time if Vice President George Cotton Sr., if he will take us through the informational updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to everyone. My presentation today highlights the performance and activities of the Office of University Advancement, and this will include fundraising and results of outreach and planning engagements that involve the alumni throughout Florida and also all of our stakeholders. In addition to that, we will also talk and give you updates on related DSOs. Let me begin with an update on fundraising, and as of today's date, we sit at $7.6 million in cash and pledges, and I am pleased to report, as I was able to do last year, that this represents a record high for the university. In 2016, we raised $5.7 million, and this same time last year, we were looking at 6.4. So again, we're right now sitting a little bit north of 7.6, and I'm pretty comfortable in saying, Mr. Chairman, that we will probably be just shy of $8 million. We have additional gifts in the pipeline, but again, even at the 7.6 million, we're sitting at a record total, and this definitely includes something we're proud to indicate, which is a very successful surge from last week from the National Alumni Association, their gifts and pledges, and we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that a little later. The other thing we're pleased to report is that the average gift is up slightly to $2,070. 2,044 is reported, but we just got an update quite frankly, before we came over here. So we're looking at an average gift of $2,070. That too is up over last year. Last year's average gift was $1,365. So we're pleased to report that fundraising is up, the average gift is up, and again, we're headed toward a new record. To date, and I think Trustee Grable had asked for this at the last meeting, wanted to break out as to categories. If you bear with me for just a moment, we wanted to let you know that when it comes to individual giving, the largest giving category is FAMU alumni from all across the country. Alumni this year represent $1.7 million in gifts. The next highest category are categories we refer to as friends or stakeholders. They have provided us with $1.4 million in gifts. And then the next largest category is corporations. And this past year, corporations provided $1.3 million in gifts. So, as in reference to categories, those are our top three. And just as a matter of reference, we do track gifts as relates to alumni, corporations, friends, individuals, and we do that on a monthly basis. That way, we get a good idea of how our giving is tracking and which groups we need to reach out and intensify. Geographically, in case you're curious, most of our gifts come from Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Those are the three largest giving regions, and as you might imagine, that's where we spend the majority of our outreach, and it's also where we do most of our targeting. If we can take a look, let's go back to that screen for just a moment. The slide that's been sitting on the screen for a while is something I wanted us just to spend a little time on because it gives us an idea as to where we've gone. If you realize that from 2012 literally up through the beginning of 2015, we were sitting on roughly $3.2 million, and you've heard me say several times that had been the average. If you'll notice that we're trekking up consistently, and that's a pattern that not only are we pleased with, but it's a pattern that's helped us kind of frame what our fundraising strategies ought to be, and it's helped us understand what the potential is. So if you will realize that we're sitting at 7.6, it'll help you understand in a few minutes where I think we can be strategically.
Excuse me, Chairman Dortch.
Yeah.
The president has a comment on this slide.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chairman Dodge, if I might, VP, kind of just want to make sure I clarify something that I heard a little discussion about last week or week before last in Baltimore, and that is the contributions that staff and faculty give to this overall number, because there was some concern that at that meeting, while some didn't contribute there, it wasn't obvious. I do want to make it clear that much of that comes at a very specific event that occurs, the first or second week of the academic year. In pre-planning, as we call it, we have a faculty and staff endowment breakfast. And could you comment if you know off the top of your head what that number looks like on average? I know there's a goal and then there's an actual amount, but I do want to make it clear that, faculty, staff, and other administrators do in fact contribute to this overall number.
Yes, and not only do they contribute, you're right, Mr. President, the annual faculty staff breakfast is where that amount is recorded, but most of the people who comprise faculty and staff do payroll deductions. Mm-hmm. So their contributions will be recorded annually, and they will be reflected in the total that you see. So all faculty, all gifts, all contributions as far as monthly deductions are reported as a part of the total. And interestingly enough, someone did ask me last week about gifts that they made as a part of the endowment through their family gifts. The total you see of 7.6 represents all gifts pledges and contributions on an annual basis. So anything that we will receive, for instance, from July 1st all the way through June 30th of next year will be recorded, whether it's a $5 monthly contribution through payroll deduction or a one-time gift that someone writes a check for $50,000. All of that's included. We do, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we track faculty giving as a part of our monthly reports. And if that's something that the board would like to see, we can make that available to you as well, because we do keep that number.
But do you recall what the ballpark is for?
Right off the top of my head, I don't, Mr. President, but I could get that for you. I know a couple of years ago, we had about $214,000.
So that's sort of the ballpark I remember. Well, don't know for sure.
Yeah, I think this year we're tracking just south of that, but I know it was in the 214,000 category a couple of years ago. But we can provide that information.
Trustee Dortch, I'm going to allow Trustee Mills an opportunity to ask a question as well.
It's a non-committee member. I hope you're doing well, Trustee George. We miss you. George, what is our participation rate among the alumni? I see the $1.7 million, which is great. But do you happen to know what our participation rate is among the alumni?
Now, when you say participation, I'm assuming you mean giving rate.
Correct.
Okay.
Meaning whether it's $1 or $100,000, how many actually?
We're right at about 5%.
5%.
And I would like to give kudos to Lieutenant Colonel Greg Clark, President of the National Alumni Association, who was actually the guest on the Roland Martin show, talking about alumni giving, speaking from the HBCU perspective, and he highlighted the fact that we're right at about 5%. We're right in that middle point, if you will.
Of HBCUs.
Of actually, if you track nationally, when you look at the organizations or the universities that are doing exceptionally well, that are in the 50 and 60%, you're talking pretty much the private universities, Spelman, Morehouse, if you look at the public HBCUs, you're looking at a range between 5 and 12%. Our objective is to get in the 10% category.
And how does that compare how does our 5% compare relative to the other schools in the state system in Florida?
I'd have to look that up. I'm assuming you mean the other schools in the SUS.
In the SUS.
I'd have to look that up specifically. We might be able to pull it up before we get away from the table.
Yeah.
But I can pull that up for you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, the other thing I will mention, there has been a lot of discussion, at least for the past several months, about the comprehensive capital campaign, and I'd like to divert discussion just a little bit because the chairman did kind of mention this a little bit earlier in one of the other presentations. We are recommending at this time that we delay action on the comprehensive capital campaign until next year, in lieu of what we're calling targeted appeals. And if we can go to that next slide, I'll explain what we mean by that. We're initially talking about a $100 million campaign. You might recall that we had commissioned, we being FAMU, had commissioned an organization to do a feasibility study back in 2010, and we had talked about that. That study was saying $50 million, so we were talking a comprehensive campaign between $50 and $100 million. To be frank, there have been several variables that have happened since the last time we met that have resulted in the foundation committing to almost $1 million in unplanned obligations that we are going to have to pay between now, quite frankly, and July 1. We had planned to expend somewhere in the neighborhood of $813,000 to launch the first stage of the campaign, hiring new staff, marketing materials, and that sort of thing. Those resources are not going to be available because we have a responsibility to meet those obligations. So we're asking that the board allow us to delay our rollout for our formal presentation until next year.
Yeah.
At least 3 of those obligations will be off the table. So we're...
Vice President Cotton,
Yes, sir.
let me kind of weigh in right here because I do have some serious concerns considering the needs of the university and considering that we need some lifeblood for the university. I do have some concerns, I think even on our annual fundraising, we set our sights too low. I mean, $7 million or whatever amount is fine that it's more than what we had last year, but I do know a number of colleges and universities who are HBCUs with 40% of our enrollment, and far less the size of us who are raising lights out several million more than what we're doing. And while you're talking about doing this capital campaign, I haven't heard a report on an annual campaign or either a comprehensive approach. And I've always been taught, even in business and for my 40 years of doing fundraising, if you set your sights too low, you don't really hit the target you really need to hit. So my concern now is we're talking about delaying a capital campaign for another year. And $1 million, yes, that may be different from what your budget was, and even that we were going to look at a capital campaign based on numbers that are dated, based on information that were dated. So my concern here is I really need to see some star power coming out of your department. I really need to, and our committee and our board needs to see some real focus, because Florida A&M University is a phenomenal university. It has a phenomenal legacy, and we see what's coming from alumni, and I think they will do much more, but I don't think we're getting the kind of leadership that we ought to have, and I don't think we're focused and have set our sights high enough for us to meet what our demands are, and when we look at the budget cuts. So I really would like for this board to hear how creative and how aggressive are we going to have efforts to meet our needs.
Well, Mr. Chairman, what I offer is what we are proposing to do over the next 3 years. What we believe, and quite frankly, going back to the point that I made earlier, we had budgeted $854,000 to roll out the first campaign. Not only is that money not available, but what we're saying is we are comfortable in saying that we believe we can raise $40 million over the next 3 years if we focus on the primary areas that are in front of you. There are certain highlights that we believe that alumni and stakeholders will rally around. We're proposing raising $3 million for the Marching 100. We're proposing a $10 million initiative for FAMU athletics. We're proposing $7 million for student recruitment and retention, $5 million for faculty research, and $15 million for student scholarships. We not only believe that that's doable, but if we look at, again, the fact that we're sitting at $8 million now, and we historically been sitting at 3, we know we can get from 8 to 12 over the next couple of years. So if we do that over the next 3 years, we will not only reach our targets, but going back to your comments about star power, one of the things that we were able to do when I first came in was to bring in experienced fundraisers who helped us raise the kind of money that we're raising. So we're comfortable in saying, Mr. Chairman, that even with the cuts we've had to absorb, we can hit the $40 million target. We can do that by increasing our $8 million take now to $12 to $15 million.
Mr. Chair?
Okay.
Trustee Dortch?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I have a comment. I think this reminds me a little bit of recruiting. When Dr. Hudson came in and he presented a plan and we basically said, not good enough. And in fairness, he came back and said, well, if you want to go bigger, faster, it's going to take this amount of money and this amount of people. And I feel like we need to hear that from you and your team, because this is not fast enough. This is not big enough. And I think we've asked a couple of times to see a comprehensive plan. And in my mind, the comprehensive plan would include, what we're going to do with alums, what we're doing with faculty and staff, what we're doing with corporations, maybe even what you guys are doing with even some grants, et cetera. But I just feel like we still have, and we're fortunate to have a big brand, whether it be within the HBCU circle or just in university circles in general. And I just don't feel like we're leveraging that brand hard enough. I feel like we have not milked, it's not a good term, we've not cultivated the industry cluster that we've had historically. And I feel like this is the third time we're having this conversation that we are not comfortable, that we want to see a detailed, more robust fundraising plan. So what I'm asking, similar to the way we handled recruitment. You know, it was, they couldn't do it on a shoestring. They needed money and resources. And they came back and said, well, if you want to go bigger, this is what it's going to take. So I think that we are open to making some tough decisions within the confines of what we have to work with, but we need to see a plan that's convincing that will allow us to challenge ourselves around making that decision. And I think right now, I haven't seen that to date.
In all fairness, and were you going to say something?
I'm letting mine
Okay.
marinate right in it.
In all fairness to VP Cotton, he did present a plan, and I think he told us it was $6 to $8 million that it was going to take for us to do this $100 million campaign. But then we also took money from him. We took $4 million of that out of unfunded scholarships, right? We took another out of the legal settlement that we have to pay for from the foundation and those kind of scenarios. So I tend to agree that I think we should find a way to not delay for a year and figure out how to get the 12 to 15 accelerate to 20 to 25 or something of that nature. And maybe we weren't satisfied with the plan he did come up with, but there was a fairly detailed project plan on how to get to the $100 million, who we were going to target, how we were going to target them, those kind of scenarios. But we did strip that money away from him, that, you know, at least the first part of that $6 to $8 million. And so that would be my only comment and response.
And maybe we need to revisit that, and maybe it's a reduced version of that plan, but I just think that, you know, I think in fairness, like there's a degree of unreadiness around the number and the timing. So I think to quiet that or calm that, we need to see a more robust plan. Then we can decide to what degree can we fund it, and then that ties to 40, 50, 60, or something less than that. So I just think we need to revisit that or take a look at that and dust it off and decide what level of commitment we can make. You know, and like I said, I faxed it to recruiting, you know, where we wanted more, but we weren't willing to invest in it, and we finally kicked the can around enough until we decided to invest in it.
Right. And so what, and I know there may be other comments, and we want to get through this agenda, but I think, Vice President Cotton, what we're trying to say is it can't, I mean, you delay a year. Many institutions do multi-targeted campaigns. The capital campaign is the big league campaign. Then there's an annual giving campaign. And then you look at all of the various departments. Our School of Business is one of the most distinguished departments. We got folks on Wall Street. I heard you talk about 3-4 states, but New York and along we have on Wall Street. Look at the entertainers that we have out there and others, and there ought to be some kind of comprehensive effort. I mean, I've been impressed with what our athletic director has done and continues to do, and knocking and banging on doors. So, yeah, and he's getting results. I mean, we need to be aggressive and all cylinders kicking here. And so this wasn't about, I mean, as you, in business, you know, if there is some kind of diversion, you recover, but you still don't shut down the business. And so all I'm saying is, let's move. I don't even remember getting a letter asking me to write even the average $2,000. I mean, when the alumni asked, I wrote a check. Even the board needs to be engaged. The board needs to be called in to work with you to look at some targeting and look at some folks. When I was asked to call Will Packer, Will's a good friend. But there are many more down there who know Will even better than me, but Will's a close friend. I mean, and when I went to him, he said yes, but there's been no follow-up on Will. You got a number of them. So let's be creative, but let's not say we're going to wait another year, because, again, there's a capital campaign, the annual giving campaign, and a more targeted campaign. So I wanted to make sure that's there. Mr. Chairman, unless there are other board members that wanted something,
there is one.
want to kind of keep moving.
Trustee Dortch, Trustee Lawrence has been waiting to weigh in.
Okay.
So a couple of things. First of all, to be honest about it, I feel kind of blindsided by the announcement. Wasn't expecting it, didn't connect with me, so now I've heard it. I would sort of say amen to both the committee chair and the board chair. I think we are not using effectively the brand we have. This is an extraordinary brand, one of the most exciting higher education brands maybe in the world. People literally know this university all over the world. I think we are seeing signs of extraordinary momentum at this university. You just couldn't help but listen to the law dean and not say, boy, that place feels like it's running along. I'm hearing other things. I don't want us to wait a year to get moving. For instance, in my view, somebody ought to be going to each of us as board members and saying, how can you help here? Personally.
Yeah,
We need to get cranking.
Yeah, I think Trustee Dortch, one last comment, then I'll get off the soapbox. I think that we're all saying we need to get moving, but I want to say it a little differently because it's easy to sit up on the table here and push down orders. But similar to what we did with Dr. Hudson, where the trustees put their monies where their mouth was and we got intimately involved, I think we need to do the same with fundraising or fund development. So we want to help, but I think that we are not comfortable with the current plan. So Trustee Dortch, as the chair, I throw it back to you for a recommendation, but I think you've heard the general body voice.
Okay. Well, and with that, Vice President Cotton, I think, one, it may be important, and I will make the time as well, but with our president and yourself, and we've got, you've got an A-team, you say that you've assembled. We need to spend some time, because we have a retreat coming up in August. So I think between now and when we come back in August, we need to really come with an aggressive plan. I think that your team needs to really go back to the drawing board, and there's a short-term and then there's a long-term strategy that you need to bring back. It may be, and again, I think we've heard it. So, and one of the charges for you in preparing for that retreat is we got to start somewhere. So why not start at 30, 40, or 50 million, at least as a target with an overall goal of whether it's 100 million, but we got to start somewhere. And if you put it off a year, we're a year behind. And then when we look at the cuts and everything, we're a year behind there. And so we got an aggressive strategic plan we're going to talk about. So if you could go back to the drawing board, make sure you get time with the vision from our president. Of course, I would ask that you will have a conversation with the chairman of the board. And just as a matter of fact, take the time to interview each trustee and find out from the trustees their thoughts and what input and even resources they can bring, and use that whole process as a comprehensive approach when we get in this retreat to come with a game plan and something that we can, and you can bounce it off us before, but we need to come prepared to have a plan of action that deals with our needs. And also I suggest, considering the very great comprehensive success we're getting, involve our national alumni president as well, and then let's try and go from there.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We've heard the comments, and we'll, matter of fact, as early as tomorrow, we'll begin to start laying some of that out. We'll get on the schedules, and we'll come back with a comprehensive Go Big strategy, I think, that meets the request.
All right, great. So we can move on to, let's go on and move on to our next session, because I know we're going to get kicked off our agenda if we can't go over. Next, go ahead, Office of Alumni Affairs.
Yes, did want to briefly mention several things that have taken place within the Office of Alumni Affairs. I won't read them all, but there are several items that we think merit being pointed out. On April 7th, the Office of Alumni Affairs assisted with the logistics of the Brevard County Alumni Chapter Banquet. Chairman Lawson was the keynote speaker at that event. April the 8th, efforts were initiated with the Northwest Florida Alumni Chapter Banquet. Our own interim president, Dr. Larry Robinson, was the speaker for that event. In regards to the recent National Alumni Convention, we mentioned briefly that it was held in Baltimore, Maryland. We had several trustees and also faculty member present for that. More than 300 alumni attended the event. And most importantly for us, almost $300,000 was raised from alumni across the country at that event. We're still tallying up the final figure, but we're very excited to receive support from the National Alumni Association at that event. Shifting gears to the FAMU Foundation, the total endowment value now stands at $124 million, up from $112.8 million on last year. As I've said previously, the endowment still remains the largest of all public HBCUs. We had talked earlier about the FAMU boosters, and in regards to the FAMU boosters, the boosters continue to work toward a reorganization structure, and as was mentioned earlier, they've hired former FAMU National Alumni Association President Tommy Mitchell as the new executive director. And while details remain as to finalizing the steps, efforts are in place to strengthen and rebuild that organization. And if they are available, I'd like to ask, time permitting, Mr. Chairman, that A.D. Overton and Mr. Mitchell give you a brief update, if you so desire, as to the boosters.
If you don't mind, we'll forfeit the booster
Okay.
update because A.D. Overton is going to give an overall athletic update.
Fantastic.
And we had a previous conversation about the boosters.
Exactly.
And I think the burning platform is really the audit
Okay,
right now.
very good.
And that's good. Yeah, and it's a progress, project in progress anyway in terms of the boosters. So let's definitely want to hear from A.D. Overton.
Very good. One of the last things we will mention then, a request was made last time as it relates to intellectual property. We've asked that the Associate Athletics Director for External Affairs, Angela Suggs, provide you with a brief update and information section, if you will, on intellectual property. And again, time permitting, we've asked that Ms. Suggs be available to do that.
Okay.
Angela?
Mr. Chairman, how much time do we have left?
We are running tight. So I'm sorry, Ms.
Okay.
Suggs, are you okay if we forfeit your
Very
piece?
brief.
Okay.
Or we
all
can
right.
forfeit.
You're
Yeah,
okay.
or we could table to the next meeting, depending on your preference,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
We could, if Ms. Suggs, you okay with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, yeah.
So trustee Dortch, we are literally at the end of the DSO agenda, if I am I
Okay.
correctly, Mr.
That is it,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, yes.
So we're at the end of the DSO agenda, and while I have you, trustee Dortch, I'm going to switch gears and ask us to go right into the Presidential Leadership Committee, if that's okay?
Yeah, that would be great. And
Okay, so this
Mr.
committee-
Chair,
So-
and as I close this out, let me just ask, at some point out of courtesy, and I know you will, we have A.D. Overton at least give us some highlights of some exciting stuff coming up, okay?
I'm sorry, trustee
point before
Dortch,
you adjourn.
I was speaking while you were speaking, so I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Okay. I was just saying, before you adjourn the board meeting, at some point, even if it's 5 minutes, if A.D. Overton is there, I think it'd be great. Let him just give you a quick little update, because I think it'd be exciting to the board about what we got coming up, where we're going, and get folks ready to mark their calendars for the fall. So
Yeah.
that was just basically
Well,
it.
A.D. Overton's going to close out the afternoon. We're going to move to presidential leadership while we still have you on the phone, and then A.D. Overton
Okay.
is going to back clean up.
Okay, very good, very good. And so this, no more business to take care of on the DSO. This meeting is now adjourned, and we will move right into the Presidential Leadership Committee. And let me ask that we have our roll call, please.
Trustee Bruno,
Here.
Trustee Dortch,
Here.
Trustee Grable,
Here.
Trustee Lawrence,
Here.
and Trustee Perry.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Very good. Let me, again, understand that we're on one of those tight schedules, but I wanted to make sure we kept everybody up to date in terms of the efforts and our following through on our directive from the board as it relates to the review for our presidential review and process. We have engaged the consultant as approved by the board, and I'm having a little trouble pulling up all of my minutes here right now. I may have Ms. Barge Miles kind of run. And Mr. Chairman, why don't you, since I'm pulling this, give everybody again the name. Everybody should have gotten in the mail, electronically, update of the consultant and the consultant. I'll give you a little more of what a consultant is. Can you do that, Mr. Chairman?
I can, Trustee Dorch. So what I'll do is we need to do approval of the March 28th, 2017 minutes. And if you're okay, I know I'm not on your committee, but I will call for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Is there a second?
Motion's been properly moved and
Moved
seconded. Are there any questions?
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. So, Trustee Dorch, we are now at the point where you can give an update on where we are with the consultant.
Okay. We have engaged a consultant as directed by the board. We also, I think each of you should have gotten that information. Ms. Barge Miles, I think, sent that out to all of the committee members and board members. And we have the consultant now has gotten engaged. One, we provided all of the documents and records from the recordings from our hearings that we did, the ones from with faculty and staff, the hearings with our students, and the hearings from our Senate. In addition to that, the hearings from the National Alumni Association, and I got feedback was phenomenal, and I'll ask committee members to weigh in appropriately on that. And they're taking, in addition to taking the minutes from the recordings, they have the actual recordings from those sessions, and they have done interviews. They should have completed interviews with all of the trustee board members, and they will be, the consultants will be given additional individuals to interview, but they're going to take all of this information, compile it into a report, which the chairman has agreed that they will physically join us at the retreat. Is that correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
At the retreat, so that we will have at that retreat a report out based on all of the information gathered, based on all the suggestions that were made from all of our stakeholders, because we want to make sure that each stakeholder group is heard, it is documented, and we want to assure all of the stakeholders that the Board of Trustees has listened. We will review, and as a team, we will then make determinations based on what we've received there. So all of that will be done in session at the board retreat coming up in August. And so that part is there. I don't know if any board member wants, who was not able to make the various hearings, the various meetings that stakeholders meeting, but you will get the documentation from those meetings. And Ms. Barge Miles, can we make those transcripts available to each board member so they would at least have an opportunity as well to do their own personal reviews, even though we will give you a comprehensive review. So that's underway. But the consultants are moving, and each board member, if you haven't, you will be interviewed by the consultant. And I'm still haven't found, here we go. Mr. Chairman, you may need to guide me the rest of this because I cannot find my
Actually,
document.
Mr. Chair, that was your last item on the agenda, and it was all information because there wasn't anything we needed to vote on. But I did want to just make one comment, a little off, I guess, as the chair regarding where we are with the Presidential Special Committee. I think Trustee Dorch is doing a nice job of keeping us on task and keeping the process that we previously agreed to on track. For those of you that were at the National Alumni Association meeting, the National Alumni individually and collectively did a vote of confidence for Dr. Robinson, which, will clearly weigh heavily on whatever we do. So that is, just so everyone is really on the same page with us, that is being added into all the feedback that we're collecting. All of the board members haven't yet been interviewed. Hopefully we can get all of that done in the next week or so that when we get together in August, we will then really be able to take a look at this leadership profile and then begin to agree on what the next step should be. But things are moving along as we planned. I think I shared with the body in Baltimore, we were delayed by about 30 days because we needed to get some contracts signed. But now that we've got that
Right.
signed, things are moving forward. And I think and the thing that I like is we are sticking to the process that we talked to you about several months ago, and we want that process to play out because we think it'll give us the best result, versus doing something outside of what we've agreed to, what we've aligned with the Board of Governors on, et cetera. So we want to try hard to stay true to our own process. Yes,
I have a
Mr.
quick
Chairman.
question.
Yes.
So just for clarification, you said that the complete profile that includes all the feedback from all the stakeholders and all the trustees will be available at the retreat?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it will.
Yes.
And the company, you'll be contacted by RHR International. That's the company that the board approved for us to engage with. And Mr. Chair, thanks for everybody's input. And the chairman has made it clear to us, and the committee has made it clear that we're going to be very transparent in this whole process. We're going to try and keep everybody in the loop. The one thing that this board said, the thing the committee has emphasized and our chair has emphasized over and over again, we're going to be very intentional and not rush, that we know that this is one of the most important decisions that this board will make, and it's one of the most important decisions for the university. So we're making sure that we're meticulous and we're getting all the information, getting all the input. I know all these different articles are going out there, but as we all know as trustees, we have made no decision. We're flowing through the process. We appreciate the input that has come from all of our stakeholders, and I must say, all of the members, I was so impressed. I was impressed with everybody, but our student leaderships and our student gathering was phenomenal. It made me proud sitting in that room, listening to the questions, listening to the input. So it said to us on the committee, we talked about it, we're on the right track, but we're making sure all of the stakeholders have that input. And so for the board, when we come together in August, we'll have a report out, and then our chairman will be moving us ahead. But what the board will have to decide is from that, if we're prepared to set a timeline, anything and everything that we're going to do, but we will need to determine what we're going to do based on a set of information that will have been gathered. And then in that same breath, I want to say a very special thank you to Dr. Robinson, because we're able to take our time and do this right, because we do have an able-bodied leader there, then we aren't rushed to rush and just fill a position. We're going to make sure that whatever we come up with, I know the trustee board has said that, we're going to make a decision that's in the best interest of Florida A&M University for years to come. And so I simply say that all the committee takes this very seriously, and our chair has charged us to make sure that we dot the I's and cross the T's, and we bring you something to work with in August. Mr. Chairman, that pretty much, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, sir, you,
At some point,
I'm sorry.
Trustee McCoy, I would just like to ask the question when it's appropriate.
Trustee McCoy, you're recognized.
Is it the intent of the consultants to take the inputs from the groups that have been interviewed, to include the trustees, assemble that information, and then build a profile based upon that information, or do they plan to go beyond that to bring other information to the table in terms of what we should be looking for in a president, or what attributes, et cetera, should that person have, or what experience or background? And I guess to make my question even clearer, are they simply going to use the inputs from the stakeholders and build their profile from that, or are they going to go beyond that?
Well, at this point, they're going to take stakeholders, take the trustee board, because you are the ones, you meaning us, are the ones who make the ultimate decision. And when the committee will have more communication between now and August, we're going to look at maybe an additional list of individuals that they may be tasked to interview so that we can have a broad spectrum of interviewing and looking at what may have been the process used by others of our size, looking at what are the new trends in all of this now. So whatever we come up with, the heaviest weight's going to be on stakeholders, but we will be looking at other information from the consultants so that when it comes to the Board of Trustees, you will have enough information to be well informed on making a decision on next steps.
Okay, Trustee
Did that
McCoy.
answer the question all right? Trustee McCoy?
Yes, for now. I've probably got other questions, but I won't prolong the process. I just wanted to get clarification on that specific question. And the other question I did ask earlier, and I asked the consultants who called me, was provide me at least an example or two of where they have used this process at other colleges or universities. And I would still be interested in seeing that. I don't know if any other board members would, but if they have done this at any other location where they were able to use it successfully to do a hire at the top level, I think it would be useful to know that.
Right. And I think they've done it in the Florida University system as well, but I will ask Ms. Barge-Miles to take those questions down, and let me encourage all trustees, if any questions come later, if you'll give those to Ms. Barge-Miles, and any thoughts that may come even after the meeting, if you follow those into Ms. Barge-Miles, then our committee will make sure we have those in, and we'll make sure those questions also get posed to the consultants. So we definitely want your input. So we welcome that. We encourage that. So we'll make sure those questions are documented and they are answered.
Okay, the last point I would like to make, I would hope that we would allow sufficient time, if it's at the off-site or wherever, that we can have what I would call a robust discussion. You've made the point, I think, appropriately so, that if we are in no hurry, then we should not be in any hurry to take information and run with it until we feel that we've gotten the input, the information, and everything else we need. So if we're building this profile or building this document or a process, then I think we ought to have some pretty robust discussions whenever we do get together, and then decide if we need more, if we need to go a different direction, if we need to do whatever, that we're totally satisfied before we launch out in any, quote, search.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, can you allocate that kind of time? I know you will, as you're planning the retreat, kind of make sure that there's an extensive amount.
Yes, we will have time because this will be the first time that we've all been able to meet with the consultant face-to-face. We've talked individually, but this will be our first collective meeting. I want to recognize Trustee Grable, I believe. Trustee Dortch, Trustee Grable has a comment or a question?
Trustee Grable?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board Chairman. I was thinking about the question asked by Trustee McCoy and regarding whether or not the consultants will go beyond. As board members, it is my understanding that we will receive those transcripts from those individual stakeholder meetings so that we would be able to clearly see how the profile was built. And that's the only comment I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Chairman Dortch.
Thank you. So I know we're pressed for time, but I'm glad Trustee Dortch took an extra minute to just explain where we are and what's next, because I think it's critically important for us to be transparent, but equally as important to get this right. And that's what we're striving to do, as we need time to get everybody's feedback. We heard from the alumni, we heard from the foundation, and we heard from the boosters. So we have those three stakeholder groups in, but quite frankly, we need to complete our own around the table. So with that, Trustee Dortch, I'm going to call your meeting to close if you're okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the committee and to the Board of Trustees. I will definitely look forward to seeing all of you in the next meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Dortch. This meeting is closed.
Okay.
And I call to order the Special Committee on Athletics, and I would ask Attorney Boris Miles if you would call the roll, please. Oops. I'm sorry. Elliot Charles, if you would call the roll, please.
Trustee Lawson,
Here.
Trustee Bruno,
I'm here.
Trustee Dortch, Trustee Grable,
Here.
Trustee Lawrence. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We have two action items. Where's ADO? We have two action items, and we're going to try to move through this fairly quickly, but I do want to take a minute and answer any questions that we might have. So AD Overton, the first action item is the presentation of the contract for the head basketball coach.
Sure. Did everyone get a copy of that? We posted it, I think, last week.
Yeah, everybody has a copy of it. AD Overton, if you wouldn't mind, if you could hit the highlights, and then I'm going to ask Attorney Thomas to weigh in to help us understand if this is the same or if there are any differences in this from the previous coach's contract.
Quick highlights. First off, thank you guys very much. I know we're near the end of the day and everyone's ready to leave. So this contract is a multi-year agreement, very similar in language to the previous coaches' contracts. It's for $150,000. And there are various incentives in here, financial incentives based on performance that are academic related, that are also performance related, that they are not cumulative, if you will. So, for instance, if there's a win of a MEAC championship or coaches, if you win Coach of the Year, you get 1 month's salary, basically, is what you have an opportunity to earn. And obviously, there's some academic incentives in there as well. And so those is a very standard agreement. And I don't know if you'd like to kind of weigh in with regards to the language.
Right. The agreement is substantially the same.
It is substantially the same. What I'm going to propose to the committee, and for some reason, the contract itself is not posted, so we can't review and approve. However, if someone will post it soon, we will review it overnight and bring it to the full board for review and approval tomorrow.
Okay.
Because I know you need to get it done, and the goal is not to delay, but we ideally should have had it for pre-read, so everyone would have been prepared with any questions or issues they had right now. So what I'm going to ask is that it gets posted today or this afternoon. We read it overnight. We will take it up at the appointed time on the agenda in the full board with questions, and we can still move it to approval in the full board meeting.
Okay.
So if there is consent, we can move it to full approval. So the next action item, AD Overton, is the 501(c) consortium.
Yes, and what we're asking there is basically just an opportunity to explore, an opportunity to create a new 501(c)(3). So it's exploratory in nature, but it's based on the same principle that we have with a very successful Florida Classic consortium. And what this does is it allows us to run our athletic businesses, the new businesses that we obviously want to run with the Tampa Classic as well as the Atlanta Classic through that particular organization. And again, this is just the request to take a look at creating this new 501(c)(3). So that we can do that. And what it does also is gives us an opportunity to work with third parties for ticket sales, things like that, and it really also reduces the liability that the institution may have, under those business arrangements.
I think we have the same issue. There's no background in the there's no background in the book. So
we could table that.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I mean, let's table it. But I do want to get to the contract. So if you guys could hustle to get us the contract overnight. I do want to get to that because I know that's something that you need to get done. So, but the next thing, and I don't know if we have slides for this, I'm hoping we do.
We do, yeah.
I would love for you to give the group an update on the deficit plan.
36? Slide 36, please. My understanding is you guys...
And this is for information only. This is because we've already voted on the deficit reduction plan. This is an update to the plan and information item only.
We'll be quick. All right, so first thing is, again, this is the, I don't know if you can actually see this. This kind of gives you an update first off in terms of where we are from a budget standpoint. And I really wanted to make sure everyone saw this before they saw the deficit reduction plan that we have been able to successfully execute. But what it shows is that, of a budget of 8.5 million is that around 90% of our resources that we've taken in, about 7.7 million. The remaining $800,000 is guaranteed contracts and all comes in as receivables based on the NCAA payment schedule as well as our Florida Consortium payment schedule. So we feel really good, obviously, about a balanced budget, and we're very happy about where we're landing there. If you could go to the next slide. We'll talk about the deficit reduction plan that we initiated earlier this year. And first off, I just want to thank, obviously, Chairman Lawson, the President, obviously, Mr. Cotton, VP Cotton, as well as our Controller, Monica Mathis, in the Budget Office. We found ourselves with a $651,000 deficit, and we worked that down to zero, basically, with a $9,100 surplus is what we're projecting. We project hopefully a little bit more than that towards the end of the year, but I'm very happy with regards to what the team has done in this particular area. A couple of things that we did to address this deficit, obviously, and reduce our expenses and increase our revenue was to number one, we reduced some salaries. We had OPS contracts that we were a little bit more efficient in terms of personnel and how we did business. We had an old bus that was sitting there that, frankly, when I first got here, I didn't realize we actually had. So we found that, put that back on the road, put some work into it. And that bus alone, I think we put on the road around October. It saved us over $100,000 in team travel. So that helped us a great deal as well. And obviously, from a donation standpoint, what we're going to show you is that we generated over $1 million in cash. And so that obviously helped on the revenue production plan. So between reducing, some of our expenses, obviously, over time, and improving our revenue lines, which I want to go into, if you permit me to, just really quickly. I want to share that with you, but it's been every 2 weeks or so. There was a call with the BOG led by Chairman Lawson and the President, and we go over the budget very extensively. We meet once a week with the Budget Office, and so there were some hard decisions that had to be made. We made those decisions, not just me, we made them collectively, and it's been a really good team effort, frankly, to get here. This is all about right-sizing your business. Our coaches have bought in, our student athletes have bought in. We understand that once, we balance the budget this year, and then we repeat that effort, that we'll have an opportunity to reinvest in the program. Can you move to the next slide?
Hey, Milton, I'll give you a minute to catch your breath. I don't want to minimize the work that Milton and his team have done. We went from averaging $1.1 million a year in the red. We started off this year down $641,000. Milton and team have worked that down to, a $9,500 surplus. $9,500 doesn't sound like a lot, but going from down 600 to plus 9,500 is a big deal. Yeah. So I just want to give you and your team kudos for working with us. in getting this on track.
Can we give him a few more areas to manage?
And you know, and Governor Link, that had historically been very, watched family with a very watchful eye, now has very positive things to say about the way you and your team have managed this budget. So I wanted to take a minute, because everyone doesn't sit on those calls every month, and just make sure that everybody knows that you and the team have done a yeoman's job in getting us to where we are this academic year.
Well, I really appreciate that, but again, it's a team effort. We've got a lot of people working some long hours, but they're really proud about what they're doing. And I'll tell you, if the board hadn't taken the actions that it's taken over the last couple of years, we wouldn't have the opportunity to do that. And particularly when you look at new donations, $540,000, that's all cash. Everything you see on the screen is cash. Did not include any of the any pledges in that number. $400,000 in investment in Champions program. This year, we plan to generate $700,000. We're at $500,000, and that's money in the bank.
You've done a great job, Milton, but you can't add.
What we do there?
It's 1 point.
Now, I know it's more than that. This is conservative. I don't want to brag about it.
under.
Yes. Go to the next slide real quick. I've always been told to be conservative. All right, and just permit me to read this one. This is really good. Over the last 10 years, FAMU Athletics has accrued a deficit of over $8 million. The average spend rate $800 per year. I have to report again, over a decade that we're very pleased that we're looking towards a balanced budget this year. We've decreased expenses, increased revenue, overall department productivity through marked progress in our athletic strategic plan. Which I'll show you here in just a second. It is very simple. We have fractures in our 6 pillars, and we fill those fractures when we find them. Fiscal year 2017 operating expenses total $8.5 million, representing a decrease of $1.2 million or 12% compared to fiscal year 2016 of expenses of $10.4. Changes, obviously I talked about those already, but it was really in reduction of salaries, contracted services, recommissioning our bus, combining sports teams, which we talked about. You've seen it over a period of time. Tennis teams combined, track teams combined, allows them to travel together. And obviously, thanks to the board, thanks to VP Cotton and the foundation, we were able to make a deficit reduction payment this year as well. What's the next one? Real quick. And fiscal year non-ENG athletic revenues increased to $8.6 million. That's a 16.2% increase, or $1.2 million from $7.4 earned in 2016. Changes include $640,000 increase in football and Olympic sport game guarantees. Now, good news about this is next year we expect a lot more in that area. 300% increase in the fundraising, which we turned, I think, $230,000 last year. And will be $1 million this year. An increase in NCAA revenues, football ticket sales, other auxiliary revenues are projected in 2018 to increase to 17%, by 17%, up to $9.7 billion. And that's what we've done real quick is that the business model has changed, obviously. And for instance, basketball, next year we've got contracts in hand of over $1 million between men's and women's basketball and Olympic sports. This past year, we did, a little over $200,000 in Olympic sport game guarantees. So typically, the focus is on football, but we've got multiple lines in the revenue business here. And I'll finish up with this. I love this graphic right here because this is where every business wants to be, is you show an increase in your revenue, which is the green line there. You can see in 2017, we're at 8.5, moving to 9.7, and then to $10 million. This is that 5-year plan that we turned in a couple of years ago. So we're obviously executing that plan, but the expenses are going down. So if we continue down this road, okay, and your expenses are going down, and your revenues are going up, your business becomes more healthy. Next slide, real quick, and this is the last one. It's hard for you guys to see that. We'll post it, but there are 13 revenue lines in our business, okay? So of the 13 revenue lines, 8 of those 13 revenue lines have increased. So it's not just fundraising, it is football game guarantees, it's building out the, the classic games, okay? It's the advertising, it's the Olympic sport guarantees, it's royalties, it's all those things that, and as you look at from between 2015 and 2018, the green bars are going up, okay? And that's where, if we continue down that road, then we have a really, really good chance of hopefully, sooner rather than later, the athletic department being able to stand on its own to start to repay the deficit that we've accrued over a period of time. And so, again, it's only happened because the Rattler Nation is fantastic, and people have bought in, they're giving, and making a difference. And we're going to have a better team. We're having a better football team, better basketball team. We've got some really good results. I can't go this whole report, but this is an annual report that we plan to release over the next week or so. But I believe it's important to be transparent, with our constituents and our fan base. And so we're going to do a report like this every year that shows our income, that shows our expenses, shows how we're spending our money, and also shows and gives credit to the wonderful Rattlers that are giving money to the program.
Thank you, AD Overton. Again, nice job. I think, you're looking at these increases, and I know we've not been able to provide you much support in lieu of Booster Club initiatives, and as you layer that into some of the other plans you have, your numbers should hopefully only get better. And knock on wood, if we win on the football field, the revenue numbers from gate proceeds will only get better. But the work that you guys again have done in helping us get our arms around the deficit plan, Dr. Ford, her team and your team collectively, it really deserves to be commended. And one thing I do want to say before we adjourn this afternoon, for women athletics, I see Ms. Suggs is still back there. They were awarded the Mary McLeod Bethune Award from the commissioner of the MEAC most recently, so kudos to women's athletics.
The women are certainly
I had to
leading the
say that
charge.
after I cut her off from the trademark thing. I saw her still staring at me, so I had to get that plug in for women athletics.
And that came with a $20,000 check too.
Oh, wow.
That's even better. So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes all the committee meetings today. We start the full board meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. And AD Overton, again, I apologize about the contract situation, but if you'll get that worked through us, we'll review it overnight and be prepared to discuss it tomorrow.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
She's emailed it to us.
Okay, she has.
On your
I see that. You're all in here. You're tapping me like.
So are you leaving tonight?
I'm like halfway through.
Are you leaving tonight?
What do you mean the contract? Yeah.
What time you leave tomorrow?
I'm supposed to leave at.
Yes, I am.
We'll see.